Hey guys, my name is Kayla and I'm a full-time traveling graphic designer, and today I'm going to be showing you in real time how I design to-do lists in 3 different ways working in Canva. So to-do lists are such an integral part of any planner or workbook design, but it can be really easy to end up with bland, uninspiring lines on a page that doesn't quite match the tone of your other planner pages. And having designed hundreds of different printable and digital products, I've found a few tricks and methods to help your to-do list not only stay functional, but have a little bit of personality that will help your product stand out in an oversaturated market. Now, with our planner practice videos, I encourage you to follow along with me on your own Canva account and feel free to use your own style. So utilizing your own fonts, your own colors, and design techniques to make something truly unique to you. And this is whether or not you're creating your to-do list for yourself or if you're designing it to sell online. So I've already done some homework on the back end to brainstorm and outline my desired to-do list, which is a process I actually outline in my digital product creation workbook. So I'll leave a link to that resource down below so you can get started on creating your own unique designs. Alrighty guys, so let's go ahead and get started on creating your to-do list over on Canva. Alrighty, so let's get started by adding a header. So we'll just move over to text and add our header into our canvas. Now I'm not going to do a lot of designing for the header just yet. I typically just like to add it in because I find that if I don't add it in, I'll forget about it. And when I start designing, I won't have enough room to add it in later, and then I'll have to adjust the sizing. So we're just going to add in the text for now. And if we reference our example for our to-do list, we have 2 columns up here in our first section. So we have our must do, and then we have our reminders. So how I would go about designing that is going over to elements, and we're going to scroll down until we get to tables. So we're going to use the table element. So click that, get it onto our canvas, and we're going to drag it into place. So I want to change how this looks a little bit. So I'm going to select this top left-hand row, and then I'm going to click and hold shift and then click the bottom. And this is going to highlight the entire table. Now, once we have the entire table highlighted, we're going to go over to table spacing, and we're going to drag cell spacing all the way to 0. And this is just going to give us a little bit more mobility and some flexibility when we start changing the size of our table. And so with our table still selected, we also are going to go over to border and then border style, and we're going to change the border weight to 0.5. Now this is a design preference. My branding and my planners typically lean more modern, so we have more crisp and thin lines, but if you'd like to have thicker lines, then you can do that as well. So referencing our example, we only need 1 column, so I'm just going to select these 2 columns using clicking and holding shift and right clicking, and then we're going to delete 2 columns, and we're going to drag this until it's a little bit past the halfway point for our page here. Okay, so we'll zoom in a little bit and we'll start designing this. So to create our heading, I'm going to select our first row and resize it down a little bit. And then we want to create our 3 rows for when people actually write in their to-do list. So how we do this, well, what we want to do is we want to make sure that these are all the same size. So I'm going to select this second row and then click and hold shift and select the bottom row, right click, and we're going to size rows equally. And while these 3 rows are selected, I'm going to drag and resize them so they all resize at the same time. Now, if I were to just resize 1 row without all of them being selected, it would just resize 1 row. So that's why they were all selected. So now let's move on to adding our heading for this particular to-do list. So I'm just going to do a little bit of text formatting. And of course, this is all design preference as well. I typically use around the same text formatting for all of my planners just to keep it consistent. And this is going to say must do. Okay, so jumping back over to our example, you see in the columns that we have here, we don't have any lines on the left and right hand side. And then we also have different line weights between each of these lines. So how I would go about doing this is I would select the entire table, and then I would go back up to border, and we're going to click on left borders, and then right borders, and then border style, and click this kind of cancel icon. So what that does is it gets rid of our lines on the left and right hand side. So to create different line weights, similar to how we did in the beginning, I just want it to be in this heading section. So I'm going to select the heading, go to borders, and for the top and the bottom of this heading, I want the border weight to be 1. So that changes the border weight for this particular section, and we're going to do the same thing for the bottom row. There we go. And so that just adds a little bit of visual interest, and also it's a design preference. You don't have to do this at all. You can keep the borders. You can keep all the line weights the same. You could just have the to-do list and the line without this top line. It's completely up to you and what you find to be attractive on your own to-do list. So now we're going to add in our checkboxes. So you could use pretty much any shape that you'd like. I think the most typical is a square, but I think I'm going to go with a circle. So you would just, in the same element section, type in circle and then select your circle of choice. And I'm going to size this down a bit so it can fit into my sections. And then we're going to just move these over so they're in the middle of each of our rows. Okay, and that section is done. And to get our second column over here for reminders, we would just drag to select everything within the table, hit duplicate, and then we're going to move it over here. And Canva does a great job of telling you when it's within the margins and making sure that it's aligned with elements that it's next to. So we'll do that and change this to reminders. Okay, so moving on, we're going to go to our middle section, which is our main to-do section. So if I reference the to-do list here, we have basically 2 columns like this, but the only difference is at the top, the header is one long header that spans across the entire page instead of being broken up like the section up here. So how I go about doing this is, let's go ahead and duplicate this top column and move it down to about here. And then we're gonna move this across the entire width of the page. So let's move in a little bit so you can see better. So to create this space in between the 2 columns for my to-do list, I'm just going to select the table, hit right click, and then we're going to add a column. We're actually going to add 2 columns. So that's one. Let's add another one. And so for the heading, we're going to just select the leftmost column, click and hold shift, and then click the right column, right click, and then we're going to merge the cells. So that gets our header to be one long header. And for us to have 2 separate columns, I'm going to select the middle column, and we're going to drag this line until Canva indicates that it's on the that it's in line with the right side of this to-do list, and do the same for this section. And to get the space, we're just gonna click and hold shift, click on the bottom column, right click, and merge cells. And so what we're gonna have to do is, there's still a line at the bottom, so we'll have to click on this, hit borders, bottom borders and take that bottom border away. So now you can see that there are 2 separate columns in this one section with one long heading. And so all we have to do now is just right click and add our rows. There's also, at times there will be a plus sign here. So you can add in your rows quicker, but I typically just right click and add because sometimes the formatting gets messed up depending on where you click on the plus sign. So I don't want to go down too far because we do have another section to add. So I'll do about right here. And the only thing that we have left for this section is to add in our check circle. So I'm going to select this first circle, click and hold shift, and then select the other circles, and this will select all of them. And then we'll duplicate them, drag them down. And Canva does their fancy little snap thing. So sometimes it doesn't align the way that you want it to, but we will fix that in just a second. Let's just get the right amount of circles in. So what you want to make sure you do is have this one at least in the middle of your row, and then you want your bottom one to be in the middle of your row. Let's drag this down a bit. And then we'll just select all of these by clicking and holding shift. And then going to position and hitting the vertical between space evenly. And if your bottom and your top circles are in the middle of your rows, then the other ones will be able to evenly space between these rows and be in the middle of their row as well. So to get them over here, I'm just going to duplicate. And drag them over. And now our middle section is done. Oh, actually I need to change our heading for this. So I'll just name it, it'd be nice to do these too. Okay, so moving on to the bottom section. So referencing our example, we have this bottom section, which this one is done when I get it. Okay, so this bottom section is similar to this middle section where there are multiple columns, but our header is all one header that spans the width of the page. So similar to this one, we'll go here, duplicate, drag this down to about here. We're gonna move this across. And then instead of adding just 3 columns, we're gonna add 5. So we'll have a total of 5 columns. So we'll add 4. So let's go ahead and right click, add column, that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have 5 columns. Do the same thing where we click and hold shift to be able to merge the cells, get that in the middle. And to be able to show you this more easily, I'm going to enable the lines to pop up just so you can see. So we want our to-do list columns to be here in the middle and over to the right hand side. So basically it'll look something like this. But we want, and obviously the spaces will be in between here, but we want these 3 columns to be the same size. So what I'll do is I'll click on this column here or this row, and instead of hitting shift or clicking and holding shift, we're going to click and hold control. So control, and so that way it selects the individual rows instead of the entire row. So we have those 3 columns selected. We're going to right click, and then we're going to say size columns evenly. So Canva will do all the work for you and size those evenly. And all you have to do is do what we did up here and merge these cells and then eliminate the bottom. Merge. And there we go. Oh, and then also we need to, since we added our lines, we just have to take these lines away as well. So for this side, it's going to be the right side. And then for here, it's going to be the left and right side. Just doing what we've been doing for this entire page. And this is going to be the left side. And there we go. We have our to-do list. Now we can go back in and we can reformat our to-do list if we'd like. So I'm just going to move this down a little bit. So you could definitely keep it like this, or you could do it in the middle. Some people like that orientation, or you could do it off to the right-hand side. Completely up to you. You could keep it this type of font, or you could do script font. I think that is the route that I'm going to go. Do script, and we'll leave it in the middle. And there we go. We have our first to-do list completed. Oh, actually, I did this again. I forgot to change my heading. Let's go ahead and change this. And I get to. Now we're finished with our first to-do list. And I think this is a great to-do list to be able to segment what is the most important, what would be nice to get done, and then things that you can just get to. And I am so sorry. I actually forgot to add in our checkboxes as well, which is super simple. We're just going to duplicate. This is why it's also really good to always double check your work before you download it and put it online. So there we go. We have our finished first to-do list. Pause. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our second to-do list. So I'll just show you what this looks like. So you see here we have basically 4 quadrants that we need to design, as well as a date line. And we have these little headers outside of our 4 quadrants that we have to do. So let's add on another page. And similar to the first to-do list, I'm going to go ahead and add my heading so I don't forget to do that. Oh. To-do list, format it a little bit, move it off to the side. Okay, that's done. So now we're going to add in our date line. So, add some text. I'm going to say dates. Of course, this is all preference. Move it over here, and I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see. Okay, so we have our dates. Now we're going to add our line. So we're going to go over to elements, get back into this, then we'll hit line. under lines and shapes and move our line up here. And then move this. So Canva does this fancy little thing where they have their snap. They snap the elements, so it is helpful. Majority of the time, sometimes it's not helpful. So to eliminate this because it's not going where I want it to go, I'm going to continue to click and hold the line so I can move it. And then while I'm clicking and holding my line, I'm also going to click and hold Control. So that way I can move this line where I want it to go without it snapping. So if I were to Now, if I were to let go of I don't know when this stopped recording. Sorry, my camera went out. I'm not sure when it stopped recording. So if I were to let go of Control before I let go of my line, it's just going to go right back to the snap. So you have to let go of the line before you let go of Control. That way it stays in place. And to be able to resize this line, we're going to just go to Line Style, Line Weight, and take it down to 1. So for our table, as you saw, I prefer to do 0.5, but for the line weights, they don't have that available. It's just whole numbers, so we'll just do 1. And then also, this is what I do for my printables, and you definitely don't have to do this as well. This is just kind of, like I keep mentioning, a design preference. I will add 2 forward backslashes just to indicate where they can put in their date. So I'll just add the forward backslash, and then I'll space a few and then add in another one. I typically give it a little bit bigger. There we go. That way they can write in their date in between the slashes. You definitely don't have to do that. You can keep in the line if you prefer. Okay, so moving on to our quadrants. So we're going to still be utilizing our tables, and similar to our previous to-do list, we're going to just select the entire table, take down our cell spacing, change our border weights. There we go. And so for our quadrants, we're going to need 1, 2, 3 columns and 1, 2, 3 rows. So we can utilize these 3 columns, but we don't need 4 rows. So I'll delete one of these. And so for our top row, it's going to be skinnier than our quadrants, as well as this left column. So I'll just move these over. And then we're going to select these to size them equally. And while they're still selected, we're going to go ahead and move it down until we hit the bottom. Okay. There we go. So we have our basic shape that we want for our to-do list. But in my example, we don't have this top and left line in this kind of little box here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it and hit top border and left border, and we're going to just eliminate it. That way it looks like we have a little cutout there. So let's see. For this, I'm going to just do a little formatting so they're all the same. And go in and do our headings. So this one will read urgent. This one will read not urgent. And so for our left-hand columns, we're not going to be able to type vertically, so we'll have to add in our own separate text box. So we'll go to text, add in our paragraph text, and the one on the left-hand side on the top will read crucial. And remember the text formatting that you put up here because you want to be able to duplicate it here as well. So they're the same. Fine. Oh, not 400. Okay, and then we're going to just rotate this 90 degrees and move it over here till it's in the middle. And expand it. There we go. And then we'll just duplicate this. Make sure they align. And then this one will read not crucial. Okay, so we have the gist of our to-do list. Now, going back to the example, we just need to add in our text and then our other to-do list in the bottom so they can actually write in their to-do list for each quadrant. So to do this, we're going to continue to add some text. So this one will read "You Now." And design-wise, I am going to hit Play Fair Display. Move it over here. And then just add a little bit of visual interest. Go back to text. And then this will be like our subheading. So this will go under "Do Now." One strat. Bold. And then actually I also want it to be color. So this one will read urgent and crucial. And we also want to add more text underneath. This will describe what this quadrant is and what type of list they need to add under this quadrant. Okay, so this one we will type, this one will type "Do these tasks first." They will have consequences if not. Okay. Now let's just move this a little bit. It's doing my snap, so I'm gonna click and hold control so I can get it to where I want it to be. And then make sure it's aligned where I need it to be. Okay, and so now we need to add in our to-do list. So similar to how we've done before, we're going to go back to elements and add in a separate table within the table. We only need one column, delete two columns, make sure our cell sizes are 0, go back in and adjust our border weights, and resize this and move this over. Okay, and then also similar to before, we're going to take the left and right side off those lines. And now we're going to just add in some more rows. Okay, that looks good. And then to add in my check boxes, I'm just going to add in my circle, resize, and add in. Make this a little smaller. And duplicate. Move in a little bit more so I can see if it's in the middle. And again, it's snapping. It's not going to do what I want it to do. So we're just going to duplicate until we have enough. And make sure the first and the bottom row are in the middle. Select all of the circles. Okay, so now to get the same text and the same, I missed this circle. The same text and the same to-do list in all of the quadrants. What we're going to do is, I think the easiest way is to just lock this table that's behind and then drag and drop our table and our text, and then just, oh, and you know what? This would be helpful to have columns that are the same size. You just move this over. Okay. So now we'll lock and then drag these over, making sure that they're aligned. Okay. And then just duplicate this again. Mark this down here. And duplicate and drag. There we go. Uh-oh. Okay. So now all we have to do is go in and change these texts. So here it'll say schedule. And then it'll read not urgent, but crucial. And then our paragraph will say put important task that can be done later in your calendar. Then down here we will have delegate. And this one will read urgent but not crucial. And we'll change this to time sensitive tasks that don't require your specific steps. And then the last quadrant will read limit, which will be not urgent and not crucial. For our paragraph, we will read, these are tasks that don't offer a lot of value and cause distractions. Oh yeah. Oh. And now we can go ahead and focus on our heading now that our quadrants are finished. And I think I'm just going to keep the same text and the same font, but I'll just make it a little bit bigger. And there we go. Now we have our second to-do list finished. Okay, moving on to our third to-do list. So if we scroll down here, as you can see, this one's a little bit unique because it's on 2 pages instead of 1. So how this works is I'll just move over here so you can see this is going to be a split page design or spread. So this is a to-do list that's split between 2 pages, but they're supposed to act together or complement each other. So they're basically the same on the same design, but split between pages. So for here, the premise is you can have projects or goals or just one big task that you have to do that you can explain in this column. And you can break that project down into 4 tasks. And then you can break those 4 tasks down into subtasks. So there's 2 subtasks for 1 task. And then you can break those subtasks into individual actionable steps. So this is one of my favorite ways to utilize to-do lists. This is how I personally plan my business and my life. Personal life is by being able to visually see what's the big end goal and how can I break that end goal down into smaller actionable tasks that will give me my results. So I want to show you how to utilize this. So let's go back to our work and we're going to add 2 pages. And similar to how we've been doing, we're going to go ahead and add our headings, and we'll add it on both pages. So this is going to be a little bit different because we're going to work backwards. So I'm not going to start on my first page or what would be perceived as the first page. I'm going to start on our second page, and we're going to still be utilizing our tables. So we'll just grab our table, move it over here. We only need 2 columns for each page. So we can go ahead and delete this column and go ahead, move this over. And same thing, we're gonna adjust the border weight as well as the cell size. And for this particular design, we need 24 rows. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to readjust this. We're probably going to have to readjust again, so don't worry about the sizing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy, add a row, and hit paste. Add a row, paste. And keep going until we have 24. Okay, so I should be almost there. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So we have our 24 lines. So I'm just going to select all 24 of those rows and adjust it until how I like it fit on the page. And so these are going to be our actionable steps right here. And to create our subtasks, for every 3 rows, we want to merge our cells. So, well, actually, and before we do that, let's go ahead and copy and paste this table into our first page. So I'm just going to select the whole table, Control C, roll up, and we're going to do Control V to paste it into our second page. This will just make it easier for our process there. So for every 3 rows, I want to merge the cells. So we have 3 rows selected, and we're going to merge cells. We have 3 rows, merge, all the way down. And these are going to be creating our subtask. Okay, so this page is pretty much done. Now we just have to add in our text. So let's move up to this page. So instead of every 3 cells, we want every 6 rows. Instead of 3 rows, we want every 6 rows. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Merge. . merge. And for this last one, I just want to make sure there's 6 in there. 6, perfect. Merge cells. And then for our last column, I want this all to be one column, but I'm not going to merge everything. I'm going to select the second row, and then I'm going to merge all of this, and then move in. This is where our heading will be. So if I were to merge all of those lines and then try to type into this column, the text will show up in the middle, and I want it to show up at the top. So that's why I didn't select this top row. But I also don't want this line here. So I'm going to select this, hit border, bottom border, and remove it. And so that way, when we type in here, and I will type in projects, but you can also type in goals, task in general, whichever. So let's just stick with projects. And I'm gonna color this background just so it can stand out. So I just selected both of these cells, and then we're gonna head over to color and then select a color. Okay, so now the only thing left is to add in our text. So let's go back to text, hit our paragraph text, and then I'm going to add here. And this is going to say task. Oh, instead of maybe task 1. We'll add it here, and then I just need to duplicate this. Okay, and then change the numbers. So tasks are done. Now I'm going to Control C so I can get my text onto the second page. Control V to get it to paste it. I'm just going to move it over. And this is going to be subtask 1.1. Then we're going to just duplicate that. Across each of our rows here. And again, it's kind of getting out of alignment, so I'm just going to move this down. You always just want to make sure your first and your bottom row are where you want it to be, and all of the other text elements will pop right back into place once you position them. Position and then vertical. Now we just need to change the numbers. So this will be 1.2, and then 2.1, 2.2, 3.1, oh, I messed that up a little bit. Missed one. And then 3.1. 2. Now we can move on to 4.1 because there are 4 tasks, so there should be it should be 2 subtasks under the 4th task. So 4.2. Okay. And there we go. So let's just double check. Oh, also, so you see here how we have our heading on the left-hand side of the page. Since this is a 2-page orientation, I typically like the second page header to fall on the right-hand side of the page. It just looks more intentional, and that it kind of just reminds your reader that these are corresponding pages that work together. So I'll just show you in the spread. You see that they just look like they belong together because one heading is on the left-hand side and the other heading is on the right-hand side. Yeah, and that is all there is to it, to create your third to-do list, which is one of my favorites, to be able to break down my tasks, my goals, and my projects into actionable tasks. And that's all there is to it. I really hope you were able to get a spark of inspiration for your next design project and learned a few of my go-to Canva techniques to create all of the beautiful things. Now, if you're interested in learning about how to successfully sell digital products on an Etsy shop or on your own website, please check out our free ebook down in the description below. It goes into a lot more detail on the types of digital products to sell, how to actually create digital products, selling strategies, and everything in between to get your digital business launched. As always, thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope you stay well. Until next time.